Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the AfterWord.
And from the loft.
From the loft. Today, I am joined by Vince Black, Kirsten Black, and a very special, not guest, person, Eric Reed.
Eric.
He's back. He's back.
He looks afraid.
He feels maybe a little overwhelmed. It's been a while since he's been in this little cohort, so I think
he just loves the new space so much.
He
Eric,
does.
talk to us about what you think of the loft. What do you think about what we've done?
I hear that we're giving tours.
Oh, yeah.
So if you would like to see the loft and make your own decisions about how wonderful it is, it's what, $100 a tour?
Yeah, $100 a tour.
We're doing another capital campaign.
Yeah, for the loft.
For the loft.
We're actually trying to figure out a way to get stairs up
All
here.
proceeds go to the benefit of the loft.
the stairs.
There are some distinct dangers up here, that's for sure.
I don't know that you'd call it up to code.
Well, and I think we haven't done this yet, but we should give a shout out to our sponsor for providing the carpet for our loft.
The family Sharilia.
Yes. Thank you, Jen, for bringing us what you would have taken to the dump so that we could have in our loft. Thank you for that.
So next time you see Jen, you tell her thank you for bringing this
Thank you for your dumpy carpet.
Yes.
No, it's a nice carpet.
It's a beautiful.
Makes it homey along with our picture of Eric's dog, Lisa.
Yep.
I'm getting angry already.
This is a good start.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Somebody did tell me this last week that they were listening to the AfterWord and they were on like minute 10 or 11 and we hadn't even gotten to content yet. That's a troubling situation.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. We're at...
No.
That's
There's some pre-recorded stuff. We'll
Yeah.
come in it.
Yeah,
Do you have a question?
Hey,
Intro
Eric, don't worry
question
about
this
this.
morning?
Don't.
This afternoon?
I feel like you're cramping our style.
Yeah.
Like we got real good at this.
We've
this
changed
summer,
the purpose of the AfterWord.
What has this become?
It's just us chatting about this and that.
Yeah, it's usually about like an hour of us just talking.
All the stuff that I would fast forward to through.
You just can't.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes, we do have an intro question. Today's intro question is, what's your favorite kind of apple?
Easy. Well, there's two. I like pink ladies
That's not
a lot.
easy. No.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not easy.
Pink
it was
lady.
very distinct.
Hey, this is my...
Tensions are high.
You just say this is an unanswerable question.
Pink Lady or Cosmic Crisp, both readily available right now at your local grocer, are really good.
Those are tasty. I'm going to go for a Honeycrisp every time. Unless I'm baking, then I'll go with a Pink Lady or maybe a Granny Smith.
Yeah, they're so nice and crisp.
Yeah.
And the flesh is really, really white.
Yep. But they're sweet.
Yes, the balance is right between the tart and the
Yep.
sweet.
Yep. I still would go with a Honeycrisp, though. I did buy an apple today. I forget what. Oh, it's a sugar bee. And I was thoroughly disappointed with it. I thought it would be more delicious than it was.
The name is deceiving on that one.
It is. It was disappointing.
Well, I mean,
That was the trial I faced today. Was that suffering for the sake
I think
of the gospel?
I think that's what Paul's getting at.
I have a joke about that. You ready? It was more like a sugar F. Get it? Like A, B, C, D, and F is fail.
You haven't been out in public in a while.
I worked hard on that joke.
What about you?
Actually, unfortunately, that's probably the best joke you've told.
My timing was okay on that one, I think.
Betty, what's your favorite apple? Okay. My favorite apple is apple crisp with ice cream.
That actually tracks. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Betty?
I don't know. I guess Honeycrisp.
That was my answer. You need to choose a different one.
Well,
You're going to go Red Delicious, aren't you?
no.
The mushy applesauce
Like the applesauce in a peel.
No. Well,
It's okay. You can go Honeycrisp.
no, I actually know what my answer is, but I'm just scared I won't say it right.
Oh, no, then we...
This is going to be fun. No, do it.
What? Is it Gala or Gala?
Yes.
It depends.
Oh,
It depends
on what?
how you want to say it.
Oh, well, then never mind.
That's not a bad choice.
Well, I like those because they're cheaper than Honeycrisp. And that's usually why I get them, but I think I like Honeycrisps more.
How much you saving?
Probably like 40 cents.
Oh, yeah. So what are you doing with all that money?
Are you
Putting
that- more apples?
Putting that in
it?
a retirement account?
Retirement,
Are you?
yeah.
Yeah.
50.
That's good.
Something.
Hey, I'm going to change gears. Eric, you have just gotten back from a 3-month sabbatical, a gift from the church for you, for your family. One where the church is very willing and desirous to take, to give rest, to give a sense of stopping from work, to refuel, to hear from God, to be present and ready to receive from God. We'd love to hear from you. Highlights, lowlights, things that were helpful, things that weren't. Why don't you start here? Because that was a lot. Why don't you start here? Just walk us through quickly. What'd you do? Did you go anywhere?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you to the church, to the elders. It was a huge investment in me and my family. The time away was a paid time away. It was enormous. So I have lots of thoughts about and lots to share. So we'll only hit some of it today. We will get to Colossians 2 today also, but
also 1.
Is that? Oh yeah, it was the end of 1, beginning of 2. We'll get to both those. Yeah. And also, I'm happy to meet and share more with anybody one-on-one. So I'll share more here, but there's always more. Just big picture, we spent time away out of the state for a while as a family, doing some really fun things. There are a lot of firsts for my kids and some firsts for me too. I'm not a big traveler. I'm a homebody, but I was thinking about it, and over a third of my time away was traveling, and they were all good trips. So some were in state, some were out of state. Some were seeing family, some were just not seeing family, and either completely on my own or with my own immediate family. So some traveling for about a third of it. About another third of it was being here and engaged in some sort of activities, either being with people or other projects. And about a third of it was me being simply alone once my kids were back in school and Cassie was teaching again back in school. And each of those were pretty unique and had some great parts to it.
What kind of projects did you do?
Well, I wanted to do some home projects, but I did not do like any big home projects. I just mean mundane stuff like errands or stuff like that, just to help keep a household running.
Gotcha. What were the highlights? Anything other than what you just said? You just worked through some of it.
It was in 3 months. So much can happen, and it was very varied because it started beginning of July and went through mid-October. And so even the seasons are different all the way through there. Probably, and this will hit on something we probably talk about later. One of my highlights was how beautiful it is in the fall here. And I had the opportunity of being outside all the time. And so I got to observe and receive the beauty around us in a way that's different than when I'm working, because I could stop and pause and have space and not be distracted, not have work things that I'm trying to think through or carry. And so I'm able to receive it in a different way. It was amazing to be able to do that. I also, I got to about 3 or 4 weeks left of the sabbatical, which was when I was spending a lot of time alone, still craving time alone. It was really interesting. I know I'm introverted, but it was like, I think the analogy is often used, like a sponge just soaking it up. That was me, craving it and just soaking it up. Is so good, which I think informs how I should work going forward. Those times aren't just for sabbatical, but...
Don't you wish you could like store that? I mean, I'm an introvert, so when I have those times, I wish I could just store that for
and use it
up when I need.
Yeah.
If there's like maybe just one thing that you would say God really showed you or taught you during your sabbatical, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 things. So I think this summarizes the sabbatical pretty well as far as how God met me. God met me in ways during my sabbatical that I did not anticipate or knew that I needed. Yet he did, and it's just his grace. So it came out, there's 2 things that came out in one question, and the question became, why me, which was applied in 2 different ways to my sabbatical. On the first part, the way it came up is that I visited a couple different churches, and one of the churches I visited, I love this church, but I was just a visitor, so I only got to receive what I saw on a Sunday morning, and what happened is that everything was so well done And they're similar enough in some ways to us that two things happened. One, I started to compare the whole time. So each time I was there with my family worshiping, I'm comparing, like, how they doing this? How's that? Oh man, they're doing these things so much better than what I think that I've ever done. And their staff is all perfect. And I know all the ways in which I'm not perfect. And so to shepherd a people became really discouraging as I thought about my job as pastor. Like, I am nowhere near the level of the staff. I don't feel like I have anything. Remember, this is the beginning of my sabbatical as well. I don't feel like I have anything to give. I even had the thought, I don't ever want to be on stage up front ever again because I don't have that to be able to give. And so the why me question came up as like, why me to be a pastor? Why was I able to do it for 7.5 years? Maybe that was a mistake. And what about going into the future? It seems like often when God talks to me or speaks to me or guides me, it's lots of little things all at the same time, all saying the same thing. And so that's what happened. There's many different things that I think how God answered that question I was asking was, I've still got you at the town church in your role. Your role might look different, but you're still a pastor of the town church and you don't have to know why. Okay. That's the answer. Great. So that actually did put that to bed for the rest of my sabbatical. The second way the why me question came out was toward the end of it, where I was observing all this beauty around me. I was able to not work, and I realized that many people never get that opportunity to have an extended time away that their employer is encouraging them to go do and paying for. But I got to do that. And so I was one of a very few people who simply got to receive the beauty and all the gifts that God is giving. It all culminated in a trip that I went to Granby in September. I didn't plan this way, but mid-September and up there, it was peak color season. So the aspens were off the charts, just electric, the yellows and the golds. And one morning, I spent all my time hiking outside up there. It was just gorgeous. The weather was gorgeous. Everything was beautiful. I was on a reservoir outside of Grand Lake up there on my paddleboard, and it was in the morning, and the water was almost like glass, not quite, but really still, really clear. This particular reservoir has different islands you can kind of paddleboard around, and you have the colors and the mountains all around you. There's ducks and birds flying over, and just those sounds, so calm and peaceful. It was me and probably 2 or 3 kayakers out there that morning. I remember thinking, man, of everybody here, it's me and maybe 2 or 3 other people that are receiving the beauty around us, like we were doing that morning. I remember thinking again, asking again the question, like, why me? Why do I get to be in that position? It feel really spoiled in a lot of ways, and I think it was the Spirit. But the answer that came to my heart was, because you are my beloved. Period. It was so incredibly overwhelming that I started weeping there on my paddleboard in the middle of this reservoir with all that beauty around me, because it put to bed a question I had been asking for weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah. Why me? Like, I'm not like some father who earned it or some husband or some pastor who earned it. The last couple of years have been hard. Yeah, but I didn't earn all of that. Like, why in the world do I get to do that? And God answered, I love you. Is incredible. Again, that was another thing, that there were many different things in my sabbatical, all kind of pointing toward this love of God for me in lots of different ways. And it culminated, I think, in that where God gave me an experiential knowledge of his love, where I knew in my head, I grew up in the church, so you sing songs about it, read books about it. We know that God loves us, but it became really, really personalized. It wasn't just that God loves the church, I'm a part of the church. It was that God loves Eric Reeves, and I'm giving you this gift. You didn't earn it, but simply because I love you. Yep, you're one of the few that morning that was observing that and receiving it. And I'm giving it to God, I love you. Changed my world. And I'm hoping that it continues to. Like, I don't want to leave that behind. It has changed something. I can talk about that more if you like. But it has changed some things, but it was extremely profound.
That's good. Thanks for sharing. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm thankful you had that.
Oh, I am too. It was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. To the church, thanks for praying. I know we asked many of you, all of you, to be praying, and I know many of you were. So thanks for that. We are glad you're back. And
good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There are a few of us here that are glad you're back. There's one who's not, but I don't want to say who it is.
It's Eric.
It's Eric.
Yeah, just set the record straight, though. I am happy to be back. It's not something I was
mostly happy.
Until you came into the loft.
Yeah, until you came to the loft.
He has no response.
Yeah, he doesn't even know how to respond. Should we? Thanks for sharing, Eric. Should we move in a different direction? Should I give the recap of the passage?
Yes.
How much time do we have?
Enough.
All right, enough. All right. Well, here we go. We're into the last part of chapter 1 and into chapter 2 of Colossians. And if you remember from last week, Paul gives this hymn, this song of praise about who Jesus is, and rolls off of the intro, the greeting to the letter, into this hymn of praise, and then now into Paul saying, "This is why I rejoice in my sufferings." And so he breaks this. What we went through, he is broken into two things: that he is suffering for the sake of the gospel. He has a commitment to the gospel. That's the first part, all the way through the end of chapter 1. And the second part is he's suffering for the sake of these people, for the church that he has a commitment to as well. And we see his love for them and his prayers for them there as well. And so the big idea of the passage is that Paul is one who is committed to the gospel and to the church that Jesus has called him to be a part of and to raise up in such a way that he's willing to go through suffering. Which can bring, I think, a lot of questions to our minds, a lot of a challenge to our hearts and minds about that. And so one of the things I want to do quickly, just very quickly, is talk about just a few things. This isn't really the recap, but I think it helps us frame the passage well for some conversation. I want to talk about the suffering that he's facing. I want to make sure that we understand that the suffering he's facing is not just... he stubbed his toe in the night when he was trying to get to the bathroom, or some sort of suffering of financial problems or whatever. But the suffering he's facing is directly related to his communication of the gospel, his following what Jesus has called him to do. The suffering that he's experiencing is from that. So I know that a lot of our church has faced suffering, and while that's has made a huge impact in our lives and forms us, shapes us, the suffering that Paul is facing is directly related to his proclamation of the gospel and what God's called him to be about. So that's one thing I want to make sure we understand as we move through this passage. Suffering is not just suffering in general, but suffering related to the gospel. And then the other thing, I just want to touch on it quickly, that very first verse, which can be really confusing, where Paul says he rejoices in his sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I'm filling up what is lacking in Christ's afflictions for the sake of his body, that is the church. That, if you read it quickly and on face value, can be quite confusing. And so one of the ways that I'll just try to simply communicate it is that I think it's most helpful to see what it's not saying. And what we know Paul is not saying is that there was something somehow related to Christ's sacrifice on the cross that was lacking. So what Christ did, that wasn't enough, so Paul needs to come up behind him and fill up what was lacking there. That's not what Paul's saying. So we have to then go from there to say, well, then what is he saying? And if we look at this passage and some of the stuff that we'll look at next week, we understand that Paul is suffering for the sake of the gospel, which is what Jesus promises for all of his followers, that we will suffer, we will be hated. And not all of that has been brought to fruition yet. There are still suffering that we're going to be facing because of our commitment to Jesus, and that has not yet been fulfilled. So what Paul is getting at is, I am fulfilling what has been promised for his followers, and in my suffering, I'm fulfilling some of that promise, just like we are as well. Does that make sense? Do you all have questions?
I think it makes sense.
Okay. Perfect.
It's more robust than the notes that I took on Sunday. Thank you.
Yeah. So there you go. There's the recap and more, and some bonus material.
Wow. Thanks, Vince. Yeah. That was helpful. Just speaking of that suffering and thinking about that, we talked about this before we started recording, but just like the thought that a lot of us probably aren't facing suffering as a direct result of our faith or our defense of the gospel. And yesterday, Vince, you used a quote in your sermon that there's one line. What exactly did it say?
It says we might question our faithfulness if we're not suffering for the sake of the gospel.
Okay, great. Thank you. But that's just something that we can unpack for ourselves here. Do we feel like we're experiencing that suffering that Paul is talking about in our own lives, and maybe why not, and how do we move forward in that?
I think for me, a prayer over the last several weeks for myself has just been confessing to the Lord that I think I'm ashamed of the gospel. And so just asking the Lord to give me boldness and that to give me courage that I wouldn't be ashamed of the gospel. And when I think about being ashamed of the gospel, I think it's that I wrestle with, like, there's still these pockets in my life that I struggle to believe certain pieces of faith, and I wrestle with it. And so it's something that I fight to believe, but it doesn't feel true. And so I think as I unpack my own heart, I think it's that I'm waiting for the time that it all like feels true and I'm on fire and I'm zealous, and then I'm going to go out and share the gospel. But the reality is that the gospel doesn't change regardless how I'm feeling. And so I think for me, it's convicting to consider that I don't face a lot of suffering for the sake of the gospel. I mean, the most suffering I have right now is maybe some awkward conversations between neighbors, and wondering, do they think differently of me now? Or, I know, like Vince shared yesterday, one of our neighbors' dad is dying, and they just seem really desperately lost and sad and about it, and there's no hope. And the hope is just that he's been a good person. He's done some good things. But there's not been this opportunity really to talk with them. But there's also a piece of me that's like, yeah, but this is going to create more tension for them. And I don't want to create more tension when they're already suffering, which is cowardly. I mean, it's not courageous of me at all. And so I think, the suffering that I face is, again, so mild because it's maybe some awkward conversations that I've had.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add to that. I've thought through this over the last week too. I don't know that I would say I am currently experiencing any suffering or struggle for the sake of the gospel, at least in sort of bold proclamation of it. So it's convicting for me. That's a short answer to your question there. We can keep talking about why, but what do you all say, Eric, Betty?
Eric?
Yeah, I no. The answer is I'm not suffering a lot for the gospel, which then the question is, am I lacking faithfulness in some areas? I think the thing that comes to mind the quickest is possibly relationally. Like Kirsten, you had mentioned with your neighbors, kind of awkward. For me, that could be the case as well. But it's usually for the people that I know better and have some investment in, that maybe there's some hard conversations or something needs a turn that could be hard or awkward, that times I will often shy away from, because I don't want to cause waves or really, I mean, it's pretty selfish for me to carry that there's something now in that relationship that is hard. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure there are many others.
I relate a lot to what you were saying, Kirsten. I think recently I've been unpacking a lot of lies that I've believed about the Lord, and I think that's also influenced how I view the gospel, and maybe actually believing like, oh yeah, this is really worth like living for and proclaiming boldly. But like you were saying too, even regardless of where we're at, that doesn't make the gospel any less true or any less beautiful. And I think to what you were saying too, Eric, I like years ago, and I think that's like the first thing my mind went to, like when we were talking about this yesterday, was like one situation years ago where I lost like a really, really good friend because of what I believe. And I think since then there's been a lot of fear and like holding on to that hurt. And I think I see now like the answer is also no for me, for probably a lot of reasons.
I don't know. The verse that's coming to mind is that Jesus, who made peace by the blood of the cross. I don't remember the reference right now.
It's in Colossians.
And just thinking about the fact that in these situations, like there's a difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking. And when we keep the peace, we're trying not to ruffle feathers. We're trying not to offend. We're just trying to not rock the boat. And I think as I think about my relationship with my neighbors and even at times with my kids, it's just, I'm just trying to keep the peace. I'm just trying to not rock the boat, keep our cul-de-sac nice and peaceful, because I don't want to be the neighbor that like disrupts the zen of the cul-de-sac. But, I think Jesus made peace. And so, and making peace requires disruption. It requires speaking truth. It requires us to do things that are hard, that may offend. And yet that's what Jesus did through the cross.
And that's what I'm very hesitant to do.
Yeah, what would you say are ways that people in America are facing suffering for the sake of the gospel? Can you think of?
I mean, like I said, disruption in relationship.
Yeah.
There can be awkwardness there. People shying away. Like if you do share the gospel and people are like, that's just not for me, and that person is weird. I mean, I'm sure there's people that maybe don't get promotions at work because they're not willing to jump through the hoops that are required to do that. They maybe value their family, or they value being able to volunteer at the church or whatever it is more than they value climbing the corporate ladder. And so there may be some suffering involved in that.
Yeah, so it comes to mind for me too, like loss of relationship, loss of power, loss of influence, loss of credibility, depending on what the circles are.
Which I think can go a couple different ways. One, you often hear people say, well, we're not suffering like the people in other countries who are, having to hide their Christianity. And while that may be true, that doesn't discount some of these ways that there's loss of relationship or loss of promotion or loss of advancement and this or that thing. That's still pain. That can still be very painful, can still be a struggle. I think Paul even experienced some of those things that we would talk about here, although he experienced a lot more than that. His life was at stake. We may not be experiencing that now. That may change, but we're not experiencing that now. But it still doesn't lighten the load all the way.
I think it's also important to recognize, though, that God gives unique grace in the midst of suffering. And I think that goes across the board. And so I think when there are believers that are suffering for the sake of the gospel, like God gives them grace to endure that in the midst of it. And I think that it's easy to say, well, I'd never be able to do that. Like if I was given the choice, or if I was, held at gunpoint, to proclaim that, or watch my children, or, what people are facing. I think God gives unique grace, and it's very evident in those situations that he is holding on to those people, and he's giving them the boldness to proclaim what is true in the midst of those situations. And so I think it's a lie that we buy into, that we wouldn't be able to do that. And I think that God uniquely enables us in the midst of suffering to remain steadfast.
Yeah, which is why Paul says in verse 24, I rejoice in my sufferings. That probably wasn't natural to him. That was supernatural in him, that he's able to be in a place of saying, I'm rejoicing in this because of the outcome of what it's producing. I think something I see, help me out with this, you guys can help me out with this. I think something I see in America, of American Christians, is that there are things that we feel as a loss or as a part of suffering that we might grab onto and say, see, here it is, I'm suffering because I'm a Christian. But it may not necessarily be tied to a communication of the gospel or a proclamation of the gospel that we're now suffering. So it may be a loss of some right that we feel like we ought to have, and now because we're Christians, we're losing that right, and they're pinpointing us as Christians for that, and we lose it, and it feels like suffering. And to that, I would say, yeah, it's a grief, it's a loss, but is it the same kind of suffering that Paul is getting at? That because of his communication, his proclamation of the gospel, he is now receiving. He's at the hand of suffering and struggle and toil for the sake of the gospel. Did that make sense?
Yeah, so maybe the distinction there is that when when the society at large, when the government at large, when the culture that we live in, when things are lost, that's not that can be suffering, but it's not necessarily what Paul is talking about here. But when it's directly related to the fact that of what I'm proclaiming the gospel to someone. I'm telling them about Jesus. I'm saying this is who my Savior is, and this is how it affects life. And then there's suffering that comes because I've proclaimed that. Mm-hmm. That's what Paul is talking about. It's not when society at large is changing laws that affect me in whether I'm a Christian or not.
Yep. That makes sense.
I have a really practical example that I think will be easy to talk about. So something that constantly gets talked about in legislature, shun, the people who make laws, is taking away the tax advantage for pastors. There's a housing allowance. We used to have a parsonage, and so the portion of pastors and other religious leaders, doesn't have to be Christian, salary that's tax free. And so there's been talk of taking that away.
That's suffering.
Now, like for you and I, Vince, we would feel that as a loss, right?
Yeah.
But that is not the sort of suffering that Paul is getting at here. It's not you and I suffering because we're proclaiming the gospel,
right,
for many reasons. Partly because it's not just aimed at Christian pastors, but it's still a loss. But that's not what Paul's getting at.
That's true. Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because earlier I asked the question, what kind of suffering do we see here in America? And we all bounce ideas, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's loss of relationship, maybe. But I think there are big sections of Christianity who would say, no, we're facing a lot of suffering. And when we began, I'll add myself to that, when we began to talk through what that is, it actually isn't the kind of suffering that Paul's talking about. I wonder what Paul would have to say to, we're suffering because I didn't get a tax advantage.
Yeah.
What he would say to that. So that's where I was going with that.
Okay, I'm going to move us on then.
Move us on. Before Eric brings up other ideas or other ways that we could see suffering.
In verse 4, Paul is talking about plausible arguments that people in the church are probably falling prey to that sound initially good or true, but the reality is that they drift away from what is true. So my question here, what are some things that we've maybe held too closely to, things that maybe started out about Jesus, or so we thought it was about Jesus, but they've kind of drifted in a different direction?
I mean, you mentioned several things yesterday, like theology, like politics. I don't remember what
educational choices, health choices,
healthy living. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I especially when I was younger, I mean, I'm decidedly complementarian. I don't have any arguments with being complementarian. And yet I used to hold that as a close-fisted issue. I saw it as a first-tier issue. And I was actually pretty judgmental of people who didn't believe, who were egalitarian, and people who were being really faithful in serving the church. And yet...
Can I pause for a second and explain those terms?
Complementarian says that, I'll say it very rudimentally, that basically the elders are men, and that women can have any leadership position in the church outside of the role of elder and maybe pastor. Egalitarian would say that women can be elders and pastors.
Equal. Yeah. Okay. Carry on.
So I used to see that as a first tier issue. And then I think as I've grown and matured, I've realized that there are just renowned theologians who debate this and go round and round and round and can't land. They can't agree on it. And who am I to think that I've got it figured out, and to the point that I could say, no, this is unbiblical, or this affects your salvation. And so I think that's something I've had to let go of. And I still believe with strong conviction that Scripture teaches it's complementarian, but I also am much more gracious and understanding towards people that land in a different spot there.
Yeah, and I think so to push that back through what Paul is getting at, and to continue to use that example, if you were to have made that something that, no, I'm going to hang on to this, and this is what I'm going to rally around, and this is the flag I'm going to wave, and this is what I'm always going to talk about. And now it's pulled you away from who Christ is and what he's about, to the point where now that thing that you're championing has become the thing. Because he says, he talks about Christ, which is Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And he says, I say this in order that no one may delude you with plausible arguments. So he's promoting, elevating Christ and his sufficiency. And then he says, and I'm saying all that so that people don't pull you away from the thing that's the main focus. I think there's a lot of ways that we can do that.
I've been in circles on both sides of the argument that have said, if you are a Christian, you need to vote this way or this way. I've been in and lived in cultures on both sides of the argument. And so, that's another one that says, because you're a Christian, this is what you must do in order to, participate in politics.
Should we just go around the circle and talk about politics? Maybe say who we're voting for. Eric, why don't you go ahead? We did this last week, so go ahead and... No?
I have some strong opinions about how we go about politics, but less strong about how you vote.
Other things that come to mind, plausible arguments that American Christians may grab onto.
I mean, you said yesterday how you educate your kids. If you're a Christian, you must do it this way. Or if you care about your kids, you must do it this way, rather than leaving it open for how the Spirit leads and where God might want to use people in different pockets of society.
Yeah. I think how we view creation in the world is another one. Both sides, whether this world's going to burn, so use it however you want, or the other side, like we're stewards, let's take care of it. Both use biblical arguments, but both sides also can make that, I think, the main thing at times too.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? What has become such the main thing that we have lost sight of the fact that Christ is Christ.
Yep.
And he's the one to be worshipped, not our conviction.
Which I think is really, really good to especially remind ourselves of, who tend to be in the Reformed tradition, because we get so, at times, blasted cocky about our doctrine and theology that we start looking down on other believers who are egalitarian, for example, or go on and on and on, when we lose sight of the main thing. And that, Christ loves the church, right? And that is much larger than just a particular tradition within the church.
Yeah. Any other toes we want to step on? Betty, you had a couple you wanted to offend a few.
Yeah. Well, I had a specific example in mind. It wasn't a generalized thing.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was specific for me. And I've kind of talked about this before. Senior year of college, wrestled a lot with my campus ministry and what we were doing and kind of what the heart of it was. And I think it started at a place of, I just don't think we're really emphasizing the gospel here, but drifted to a place of just kind of selfish frustrations, I think, but also kind of to tie it back into this, it became less about Christ and even more for me about worshiping the church over campus ministry over Christ too. And I think just became more about the institutions rather than who they're about. And I think even last year, there's just a lot of, even outside of being in the ministry, there's a lot of turmoil in it that I got caught up in. And again, was just cared a lot about the arguments and cared a lot about what I thought was right or what I wanted other people to believe and what was going on than about Christ. And I think that's been a place for me, just caring more about the place in itself and what it's giving me rather than is it really pointing us to Christ.
And so maybe the caution in all of these things is at any point, if it becomes us against them, especially in believing communities, then I think that needs to serve as a red flag, as a warning to us that there is division there. And so it doesn't mean we all have to agree on everything, but are we fighting and picking on things that are not the gospel? And are we fighting on picking things that ultimately are not going to impact our salvation and our eternity? And if that's the case and it's turning into us against them, then I think we need to be really cautious and consider, am I being humble as I approach this, as I consider, like, am I taking on the role of the Holy Spirit, thinking that I need to convict somebody of something that is a conviction of mine? It's not a sin issue, but it's a conviction issue.
Did you have something? You looked ready.
I did.
Primed and ready.
And none of us are saying you can't have strong opinions or strong convictions.
Yeah.
About first, second, third order of things. None of us are saying that.
Yeah.
What we are saying is some caution around making secondary and tertiary things primary, and people's buckets are different.
But even, I know what you're getting at, but even primary things not becoming the thing that we're worshiping.
That supplants Christ.
Right. Yeah, that sets Christ aside. I think the enemy loves this. He absolutely loves getting into the little cracks of ways that he can pull Christians away from Jesus and apart from one another. And it's really subtle. I mean, the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis there's example after example in that. There's one particular part in the book where if you don't know the story, the senior enemy is giving instruction to the junior enemy, demon, about how to tempt these Christians away from what's primary. And there's this one part in the book I remember so vividly where he talks about the woman in church who sings just a little bit off key, and how that's exactly what they want, because what it does is it distracts the people around her to think most about what she's doing and being off key than focused on what they call the enemy, who is God. I mean, maybe a simple, silly example, but the enemy loves those things that just will divide us and pull us away from seeing Christ, which is what I think Paul's getting at. This is about Christ, and I'm telling you all of this so that you wouldn't be persuaded to pursue plausible arguments that really lead to nowhere. This is about Christ, and that's why I'm suffering. I'll suffer for the sake of the gospel and the church to keep that the primary thing.
That's good. I'm just thinking through our Sunday mornings. How much time do we have?
You can finish your thought.
Okay. I'm thinking through Sunday mornings. Are there things like somebody singing off key a little bit, not distracting us, but are there things that either we personally bring in or we corporately are doing on a Sunday morning that starts to compete with Christ a little bit for attention, either in our hearts or corporately, or whether it's the heat or who knows what all that might be. But surely there are numerous things every Sunday morning that compete for that attention.
Yeah. I mean, we've made some decided, some decisions. We've made some intentional decisions as elders about some of the things we do so that hopefully, at least our hope is, that Christ would be central. All the things we walk through on a Sunday are for that reason. That's not to say that we've nailed it. That's not to say that therefore there won't be any distractions ever.
So then that becomes a thing. Look how perfect everything
we've
is.
done it.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of different things that we thought, oh no, we need to keep Jesus the main thing here. That's why we don't have a smoke machine.
Fog, like
the fog machine,
lasers.
And lasers.
Okay.
Betty just cancels that.
I'm going to ask the final question. Eric, you're really going to like this question. You've never heard it before. How does this passage raise your affections for God?
Okay, I'm going to start this one. I never do that, but I'm going to start this one. Oh. There's a verse I want to read. Chapter 1, verse 27. To them, Paul speaking about the Gentiles, that's us. To them, God chose to make known how great among the Gentiles are the riches of the glory of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. That is unreal. Number one, that he would choose the Gentiles. And number two, that it's the riches of the glory of the mystery of Christ, the hope of glory he has revealed to us. We could probably spend an entire podcast just trying to unpack that. But what a good and gracious God to include us in that, simply because he desired to. And it brings him glory in ways I'll probably never fully understand.
Yeah.
I think in verse 2 of chapter 2, it says that their hearts may be encouraged, being knit together in love, to reach all the riches of full assurance of understanding and that the knowledge of God's mystery, which is Christ. And just what we were just talking about, being knit together, that our hearts may be encouraged and that when we are knit together, we reach all the riches of full assurance and understanding more about Christ. And so when we fight for unity, we know more and more about Christ, and that's mind-blowing.
That's good. I think the thing that stands out, and I've said this over the last couple of weeks, but it's profound here, and you just read some of it, Kirsten, is all of the emphatic words, all, every, even that part you just read, to reach all the riches of full assurance of understanding and knowledge of God's mystery, which is Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom. That God is the kind of God that doesn't want to just reveal parts of himself or give us part of a life, but he wants to give us a full life that is full of assurance and all understanding of who Christ is. That's the kind of God we have.
When you look at the church and just the unity in the church, I mean, there are no other organizations out there that are unified around one person that has so much unity. I mean, you've got people in our church on the entire spectrum of politics that are loving each other and serving each other and putting aside their cares and concerns for others. You've got people on the entire spectrum of education in one body. You've got people on the entire spectrum of
apples and the apples
yeah.
they like. Yep.
But on and on and on, and yet you see the unity of the church, and you're just like, man, that points all glory to God.
Yeah.
There's no reason why this body of believers who are so different should love one another, but we're not unifying over a cause or over a belief. We're unifying over Christ.
That's good.
This is such a privilege as a Christian to be able to be a part of a body like that, of the church. It's not just unique to the town church, but of the church.
Yeah.
We get to be in a relationship with a God like this that we're reading about here, who doesn't hesitate to show us the riches of his glory and the mystery of Christ. In fact, he invites us in, and in fact, he sacrificed himself, like he did all the work for it. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And having grown up in the church, I become numb to it, but it is nuts.
Yeah.
So if you are a listener, we have 2 listeners now, I think, and you are a Christian.
We had 3 when you were gone.
It went down.
Yeah, it went down.
It's a privilege for us.
How about you, Betty? You didn't answer your question. That was a great question, by the way. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. I really appreciate that. I was a little nervous to ask it. I think for me, it's just that the truth of the truth of the gospel is no longer a mystery. I mean, that's referenced in verse 26 of chapter 1. It was once the mystery hidden for ages and generations, but that has now been revealed to his saints. And just thinking of Romans 5 as well, like God demonstrated his love for us, and that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. Like we've seen that come to fruition, and that's a huge gift.
Yeah, it's good. Hey, next week, let's finish chapter 2. This Sunday, read ahead, be thinking about it, looking ahead, talking about it, engaging in this, chapter 2, the end of it for next week.
Great.
Eric, glad you're back.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Welcome to the loft.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
On the
from
flip,
the
from
what?
The loft. I was going to say on the flip side.
We'll catch you on the flip. See you on the flippity flip.
From the loft. Okay, bye.
We need to work on this.